Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the bright Chevron Borderless blanket, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description. There you will find both right and left-handed video tutorials, a link to the written pattern right underneath the videos, as well as links to all the supplies and other tutorials and links and things that I might mention here today. This pattern is made with Red Heart Heatwave, which is a really great yarn from Yarnspirations that heats up under UV light, so it keeps you extra warm and cozy. If you'd prefer not to use Red Heart Heatwave, a great substitution would be Red Heart with Love. This pattern comes in 8 different sizes. Shown here on your screen right now is the baby blanket size, but instructions for every size are included in the pattern. So again, please be sure to go to the written pattern at the link in the description, or go to mooglyblog.com and look for Bright Chevron Borderless Blanket to get the chart with all the different sizes. In addition to the yarn, you will of course need a hook. This one is a USK 6.5 millimeters by Furls, but you should use whatever gets you gauge. That said, it's a blanket, so it doesn't have to fit perfectly. So as long as you like the fabric you're getting, then your hook is just fine. You'll also need your standard crochet supplies like a yarn needle, scissors, and stitch markers. The Bright Chevron Borderless blanket is made in 4 sections. You use the white color throughout and then change the colors from blue to green to orange to red as you work your way up. That said, those are of course just the colors I used. You can use whatever colors you like. It is a simple 2-row repeat, and from the back you can see it just makes some really attractive stripes. One other thing before we get stitching that I wanted to point out is this is what the Bright Chevron Borderless blanket sizing chart looks like on the written pattern. So this is the chart you'll look for when you're deciding how to, rather what size you want to make, and it tells you the width and the length for that size, the chain that you start with, the total number of rows. That doesn't include the final row of the pattern that sort of caps it all off, but that's your regular pattern rows. Then there's one final row that I'll show you that caps the whole thing off. So really the total rows for the pattern, for the blanket of each size will be just one more, but this is the rows you want to look for while you're making it before you get to that final row. So if you break it into 4 sections, as I did, then that is the number of rows per color pair that you'll have there. If you only want to switch colors 3 times or something like that, then you'll need to redo the math on the total rows to figure out how many rows per color pair you want to make. And the total yards is for the entire size of that blanket. So for instance, the baby Afghan uses 1,480 yards. So if you're using the same color scheme I am, then there's some instructions here on how to get exactly how much yardage you need for each color. And I've kept it a little bit generic there, so you can decide what kind of yarn you are using, whether you're using the Heatwave or with Love or your own choice. You'll need to look at the yards per skein to see how many skeins of yarn that is needed for your blanket. And I've also included the custom sizing information. So if you want to make your own custom size, you can just start with a chain, a multiple of 4, and then of course work to the desired length for however many stripes or however big you want your blanket to be. So now we can go ahead and get started crocheting. So the first thing you need to do, of course, is look at that chart and see how long you need your chain to be. Today, I'm going to be making one of the custom sizes, so I've only chained 16, which is, of course, a multiple of 4. Once you've got your chaining done, then you're ready to begin row 1. To begin row 1, we're going to skip the chain closest to the hook and then single crochet in the next 3 chains. I really like to work into the underneath loop of each chain that you'll find back here, but if you prefer to work under the top 2 loops of the V there that most people do, that's fine too. It's totally whatever you prefer. So I'm going to skip the chain closest to my hook and then single crochet in the next 3 chains. So there's 1 and 2 and 3. After that, we're ready to begin the repeat, where if you're looking at the written pattern, it's the part that begins with the asterisk. So it says chain 1, skip to next chain, and single crochet in the next 3 chains. So we chain 1, skip the next chain, and single crochet in the next 3. And that is the repeat that's going to take us all the way across this first row. So when we get to the end of row 1, we'll end with single crocheting in the last 3 stitches. So there's my third for this repeat right there. You can see I've got my chain 1, skip 1, single crochet 3. Let's do that together one more time. We chain 1, skip the next stitch, and single crochet in the next 3 stitches after that. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to for your blanket size. I'm sure it's a lot wider than this. And I will see you when we're ready for row 2. Okay, so when you've finished row 1, you should have sets of 3 single crochets with those little chain 1 spaces in between. To begin row 2, we're going to turn, and then we can work either a chainless starting double crochet or a chain 3. Now, because this is a borderless blanket, I really recommend that you try the chainless starting double crochet, which I will be demonstrating here in a minute. And I have a separate video tutorial for this here on the Moogly Blog YouTube channel if you'd like to take a closer look at that as well. It just gives a much nicer, firmer edge than the usual chain 3. However, if there's another double crochet substitute you prefer to use, absolutely you can use that too. It's just about the finished blanket and whatever is going to give you the look you like. So to make the chainless starting double crochet, I'm going to pull this loop on my hook up to about the height of a double crochet. Then I'm going to secure it with my finger on top so it can't move. Then I will wind the loop itself around my hook as a yarn over, go into that very first stitch, yarn over with my yarn, pull that loop through, and then I need to yarn over and pull through that loop and the loop that was wound around my hook, so really behind it, then yarn over again and pull through those last 2 loops. And that is how you make a chainless starting double crochet. Again, look for the video titled Improved Chainless Starting Double Crochet on the YouTube channel if you'd like a closer look at that. So after you've made that first double crochet in your first stitch, however you like to get it done, then we're just going to double crochet across the rest of the row. So that means you'll double crochet in each single crochet, and then when you come to that chain 1 space, you can go ahead and just double crochet right into the space. You don't have to try and work into that individual chain. So let's go ahead and do a few of those together. I'm just going to double crochet into each one of these single crochets here. We've already made that chainless starting double crochet, so that's that first stitch of the row there. Then when you get to the chain 1 space, we're just going to go right into that space. You don't have to try and work into the chain. You can just go right on into that space underneath, a lot easier, and make your double crochet. So we'll just continue double crocheting on across, and I'll see you at the end of row 2. Okay, at the end of row 2 is where you're going to need to pull up those stitch markers. We are going to be using 2 active loops for this pattern. It's one of my favorite techniques to use for making striped patterns, and it just makes some really fun patterns. So we're going to go ahead and pull this loop on our hook, this active loop, up nice and high. Then we're going to go ahead and put a stitch marker right in that loop. And I like to put it around the working yarn as well. And this way it'll help hold that loop open so we can come back to it later. We're going to go ahead and turn though. There we are. And just let that sit. This is where we're going to bring in our second color, our color B. Now, as you saw on the finished blanket, obviously I started with white and then added other colors. I'm using other colors here today because, of course, you can use whatever colors you want, and these are just a little bit easier to see. So, with your color B, whatever it may be, we're going to join with a single crochet to the first stitch. So the easiest way to do that is to go ahead and put the slip knot of the new color on your hook. Pull it up nice and tight there. And then I am going to simply insert my hook right in that very first stitch. It can be a little wobbly. If it starts pulling up there, you can just give that active loop a little tug so that it maintains its size. And then we'll just go in there and go ahead and make a single crochet just like we normally would. Pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through those 2 loops. Then we can just go ahead and give that a little tug to tighten it up if we need to. Everything's always adjustable there. And we can weave in that end when we're all done. So we've joined with our single crochet, and now working in front of the previous row, we are going to treble crochet in the first skipped stitch of row 1. So that means we are going to yarn over twice for a treble crochet, find that first skipped stitch. Remember that was the 4th one in. We had 3 single crochets, and then we skipped that next one. That loop right there is where we want to be working this stitch. So we're going to find that loop of the skipped stitch right there, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then we can work off our treble crochet. Yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2, just like so. Then we're going to skip the next stitch, so that next stitch right there behind our treble. And in the stitch after that, we're going to work a single crochet, like so. Then we chain one, skip the next one, and single crochet in the next. There we are. And now we're going to do what's probably the trickiest stitch of the whole thing, a treble crochet 2 together. We're going to begin with the asterisk in row 3 here, and it's treble crochet 2 together in the previous skipped chain of row 1 and the next skipped chain of row 1. So what does that mean? We're going to go ahead and, well, first of all, pull up more yarn if you need it here. I'm just working with the ends and odds and ends left over from my blanket. Yarn over twice. Find that same stitch we just worked into for the previous treble. Go right back in that exact same stitch. Let's see, this one wanted to get a little confused. Sometimes you have to give them a little tug, pull your stitches apart so you can find them here. There we go. So I go right back in that same one, and I'm going to start working off my treble crochet here, but I'm going to stop when I have 2 loops left on the hook. Then I'm going to yarn over twice again, get that little fuzzy off there. There we are. And jump on over here to that next skipped stitch. So you should have 3 single crochets in between there. Find that next skipped stitch back here from row 1. And go under that loop right there. Yarn over and pull up your loop. Yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2. And then as soon as you've got those 3 loops left on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops to finish the stitch. So you can see we are starting to get that really great zigzag look. Now we need to skip the next stitch of row 2 right there behind our treble crochet 2 together. Go to the next stitch and make a single crochet. And then we chain 1, skip 1, and do another single crochet. Like so. And then it is time for another treble crochet 2 together. So let's go ahead and do that together. We're going to yarn over twice, find that same stitch, that the previous one there, the last one we worked into. Go under that loop, yarn over and pull up your loop. And one little tip here on trebles, because they can get a little bit leggy if you've worked with them before, you'll notice I'm trying to keep all my loops really close together. That really helps with that quite a bit. So that's something to work on if you find that your treble crochets get a little wonky sometimes. So I'm going to pull through 2 and yarn over and pull through 2 and stop with those 2 loops left on the hook. Yarn over twice again, find the next skipped stitch, which for my little swatch here is the last one, but you'll probably have a whole bunch. Go under that stitch here. And believe me, the rest of these will be easier. It's just working into this first row that takes a little bit of time. Working into the chain is always a little bit more difficult. So we'll pull up that loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now we've got our 3 loops left on the hook. We yarn over and pull through all 3 and finish that stitch. Then we skip the stitch behind it, single crochet in the next, chain 1, skip the next one, and single crochet in the next. And that's the repeat that'll take you all the way across until you get right here to the end. So when you do get to the end here, we're just going to yarn over twice and put a treble right back in that same stitch there so we can finish off our zigzag pattern across our row. And this is not a treble crochet 2 together, this is just a single one, so we just go ahead and finish that off like so. You can see how that capped it off nicely. And then if we skip the stitch behind that, there's just 1 stitch left, and that's where we put our final single crochet to finish off our row. And that is how you make row 3. Now let's begin row 4. Row 4 is again going to start with either a chain 3 or a chainless starting double crochet, whichever you prefer. So I'm going to yarn over with my big loop there and go into my first stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through that and behind the one that was wound around, yarn over, and finish off by pulling through those last 2 stitches. Now another stitch marker can be really helpful here. If you do choose to use this stitch, I really like to go ahead and put a stitch marker right in the top of it, under those top 2 loops there, just like a normal V. It just makes it a little bit easier to find. These look a lot like a double crochet, but they can be just a little bit wobblier, so that really helps you find it on your way back. Then we're just going to do the same thing we did for row 2. We're going to double crochet in each stitch across, and when we come to one of those chain 1 spaces, just go ahead and double crochet right in that chain 1 space. So let's do a few of those together here. I'll double crochet in these next couple stitches, and I'm just going right into the tops of these stitches, whether they're trebles or treble crochet 2-togethers or single crochets. You just work into them here from the back, just like a regular stitch. Then, like I say, when you come to a chain 1 space, you can go ahead and just double crochet right in that chain 1 space. So continue working across for row 4, and I'll see you when we're ready for row 5. Okay, so when you get to the end of row 4, we're going to pull up that loop tawl again and grab another stitch marker and go ahead and secure that loop as well. So now both those loops are secured. We can put it down and walk away if we need to, and none of our stitches are going to come out. But we're ready to keep crocheting for now, so let's move on to row 5. So I'm going to go ahead and turn again, just like I normally would, to work back here from the front. And now I am ready to find that active loop from our first color. So I'll go ahead and take that stitch marker out, and I'm going to reinsert my hook in that loop. So I want to take a close look at that loop and just give it a little tug, not too hard. I don't want to pull it out all the way. I just want to see, you can see it's this loop right there that's moving down into the stitch when I pull it. So I need that loop to be in the front of my hook. So I can go ahead and get that in there just the way I need, and then go ahead and turn, and I'm ready to work again. So to begin row 5 and all your row 5 repeats, we're going to start with a chain 3. Not a chainless starting double crochet. This genuinely needs to be a chain 3. So 1, 2, and 3. Then, if you need to here, take a moment and separate your yarns. Mine's wanting to, get a little confused. Oh, you know what? My stitch marker fell off my hook here, or my loop. It looks like I missed it and I only caught the working yarn. So let's get that back in there before that pulls out. There we go. Okay. So if you find your yarns are getting confused in this, you're only going to be working with 2 yarns usually at a time, but go ahead and take the time to separate them. And then I really like to keep them apart from each other so that when I'm pulling from one, it's not pulling near the other. So now that we've got that all settled, let's go ahead and get back to our project here. I have chained 3 to begin row 5. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to single crochet in that very first stitch of the last row. So again, just pull that little extra active loop out of the way if you need to, and get that single crochet in there. And then it's going to be exactly the same as row 3, only this time it's going to be a lot easier because we're going to be working into that row rather than down into a chain. So let's go ahead and do a few of these together. We're going to start again with our treble crochet, so we'll yarn over twice. Then we're going to jump all the way over here, and now we get to work into that skipped stitch rather than that skipped chain. A lot easier to get the hook in there. Let's go ahead and make that treble crochet. There we are. Then we, of course, skip the stitch right behind it, single crochet in the stitch after that, chain 1. There we are. Skip the stitch after that, single crochet. Then we've got our treble crochet 2 together. So we yarn over twice, go back into that skipped stitch where we put our last treble, and work that off until you've got 2 loops left. Yarn over twice again, find the next skip stitch, just jump on over all of those stitches here, go on in there, start your treble, and when you've got 3 loops left, yarn over and pull through all 3. So you can see that really just stacks up those zigzag patterns. So of course then we skip the next one, single crochet in the next, chain 1, skip the stitch after that, single crochet in the next one, and then treble crochet 2 together again. Go into the previous one, work that treble off until you've got 2 loops left on your hook, yarn over again, go to the next skipped stitch, start making your treble there. There we are. When you've got 3 loops left, yarn over and pull through all 3, skip the stitch after that, single crochet in the stitch after that, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet in the next. And then finally, since there's just 2 stitches left, we know it's time for a treble here to finish off this row. So we just go into that previous one and make our treble right there. There we go. And then we just single crochet right in that final stitch, which is nice and easy because I've got that stitch marker in there. Then all we have to do for row 6 is the same thing we've been doing for all our even numbered rows. Turn, make our chainless starting double crochet, and then double crochet on across. Then you can just keep switching these colors back and forth until you're ready to change a color. So I'm going to go ahead and add my row 6, and then we'll work on a color change together. Okay, so I finished my row 6, and normally I would go ahead and insert my hook in the active loop of my color B here, my red, and just go ahead and repeat rows 5 and 6 until I was ready to change colors. But for the purposes of demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm ready to change colors. This would be a lot of fun too if you were making sort of like a scrap can. So what I'm going to do is before I finish off with this color that I'm done with, what I want to do is go ahead and reinsert my hook in that loop there, and I'm going to just chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I will go ahead and cut the yarn. I'll grab my scissors here. Always leave a good 6 inches or so for weaving in your ends, but we're also going to need to do just a little bit of sewing for this one. So we yarn over and just go ahead and pull that loop right on through to finish it off. Then you can go ahead and leave that little chain 3 hanging off the side there, and I'll show you how to use these when we come back to it for the finishing. In the meantime, let's go ahead and add our third color. Okay, so to add your new color, you're essentially just going to be repeating row 3 here where we added our new color the first time. Go ahead and get your slip knot on the hook here, and then we will just go ahead and join right in that first stitch with a single crochet. There we are. And then we're ready to repeat. Essentially, it's row 5 again, where we're making those treble crochets right in front of the previous stitches. Just drop down into those skipped stitches, and you'll be all set. So you'll just keep making rows in whatever colors you like until you have the length of the blanket you want. And then there is one final row to cap it all off, and then just a little bit of finishing, and you'll be all set. When you've made as many rows as your chart calls for your size, or whenever you're done crocheting and you're ready for the last row, then you'll want to go ahead and break the last yarn before your last row. Here, we're going to go ahead and make sure we finished with one of those double crochet rows. And then let me find my scissors here. There we are. We'll go ahead and, oh, before I break that though, we can't forget to go ahead and do our chain 3 and then break. So let me get that right back in there. There we are. So once again, we want to go ahead and chain 3, and then we can cut our yarn and fasten off here. Pull that on through to make it nice and secure. And then we are ready to go ahead and make our last row. And I really like to make the last row in the same color I started with, but of course you can use whatever color you like. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that loop up and open again here so I can put my hook back in that active loop of our color here. There we are. And I want to go ahead and just sort of get all our little ends out of the way. And then to begin, let me pull that to the back actually. To begin this row, just like the others, I'm going to start with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Then I am going to single crochet in that first stitch. And it's going to start out looking a lot like our other treble crochet rows. We're just going to be doing the finishing here just a little bit differently. So first thing we'll do, of course, is find that first skipped stitch and make our treble. Then we skip the stitch behind it, single crochet in the next. And then instead of chaining 1 and skipping 1, we're just going to go ahead and single crochet in that one as well. And that'll give us a really nice straight edge here for our blanket. So instead of single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, we just single crochet 3, and then we're ready for our treble crochet 2 together. And that's really the only difference in that final row. Otherwise, you just go ahead and work it across as you normally would when you're making your treble crochet rows. And I'll see you as soon as we've got that done for our final little bit of finishing work. Okay, so we've got our final row here, and you can see it's just got one straight edge there because we haven't skipped any stitches. And that's really all we need to do for that color. So we're going to go ahead and cut our yarn, and then we can finish that off and weave in that end when we're done. But let's come back to that other edge here, our first edge, where we've got all these chain 3s hanging out. Now, actually, when you've got your last stripe before the color, you don't need that chain 3. It's just a really good habit to get into, so I want to make sure to do it so you don't forget to do it for the rest of your rows. But for this one, we don't really need it. So if you have made it, you can go ahead and just pull the knot right back out and pull those chains out, and that'll be an end ready for you to weave in. So I'm just going to carefully pull those chains out, and then I can secure that color, and I will weave that end in as well. So you can see that gives it a really nice finish right there. But anytime we've got one of those other color changes, we've got this end hanging out here. So what I want to do is I want to make sure to pull that up along the side so that it matches the rest of the side here, so that there's not just that little bit hanging out unfinished. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and put that end on my yarn needle here. And then I'm going to actually go ahead and sew it right to the base of that stitch there. So I want to come up to the next color change row and almost act like this is another zigzag that's attached to this row. So if I just put my needle right at the bottom of that stitch and go ahead, and I always like to sort of turn them around so that the front of my chain is showing there. Just give it a little twist and go ahead and pull that in tight. And then when I weave in that end, it creates this really beautiful finished edge here so that it can really be a borderless blanket. So let's take one more look at this edge here. You can see here's where I've done the chain 3s every time I change color. And you can see here is where I changed colors and I had that chain 3 that I've sewn right to the bottom of that stitch. So really you'll only have a few of those when you change the colors. It's the only time you'll need to worry about that chain 3 at the end. But you just want to tuck it up into the base of that next color there because it really gives it a really nice finished look all the way along that edge. And that's how to crochet the bright chevron borderless blanket. Be sure to go to the link in the description or find the pattern on mooglyblog.com so you can get instructions for baby, Lapgan, throw, twin, full, queen, king, and California king blankets, as well as all the information you need to make it your own size. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a great day, everybody.